I've built the ultimate battle robot. It's got missiles, lasers.
Alistair Smythe, the ultimate spider slayer origin explored. Spider-Man is renowned for its esteemed gallery of rogues. Not many heroes get the chance to go against one celebrated villain after another, but Spider-Man has Venom, Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Kraven the Hunter, and so on. The popular 90s cartoon known as Spider-Man the Animated Series made this gallery even better as it added Kingpin and his henchman Alistair Smythe to the list. But there is a lot more to Smythe than being the right-hand man of a crime lord. He is a genius inventor who seeks revenge on Spider-Man because Spidey is indirectly responsible for his father's death. As such, he creates formidable robots known as the Spider Slayer to do exactly what the name suggests: slay the spider. In today's video, we will go over Alistair Smythe and the roles he has played in different forms of media. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Alistair Smythe's tragic origin. Smythe is a prominent antagonistic character in Spider-Man the Animated Series. He works under Kingpin as his brilliant inventor who designs lethal killer robots, or rather, Spider Slayers. His father, Spencer Smythe, also happened to be a robot designing inventor who had created Spider Slayers before his son. Smythe's enmity with Spider-Man began following the Web Slingers' battle against a Black Widow Spider Slayer. The Oscorp factory exploded and collapsed as a result of the battle, all while Smythe's father and Smythe himself were inside. The resulting debris caused Smythe to get crippled while Spencer was allegedly dead. Smythe went on to blame Spider-Man for causing his father to die. This is where he began to resent the friendly neighborhood superhero. Not long after, Kingpin approached Smythe and offered to fund him with building more Spider Slayers. Since Smythe wanted revenge on Spider-Man, he took up the offer and started to build Spider Slayers for Kingpin. Smythe rebuilt the Black Widow Spider Slayer and created another one called the Tarantula. He went above and beyond trying to kill Spider-Man, be it by exposing him to knockout gas or by attaching a bomb to him and J. Jonah Jameson. However, Spider-Man was able to avert the crisis and defeat the Black Widow Spider Slayer once again. Since Kingpin and Smythe failed to achieve their goal of killing Spider-Man, Kingpin asked Smythe to work for him until they succeeded in killing the superhero. As a genius inventor, Smythe also wanted to study the extraterrestrial element of Promethium X, which was a resting place for symbiotes and other alien life forms. However, he had to cater to the needs of his boss first, who had buyers lined up for the element after getting Rhino to steal it for them. Spider-Man was able to steal it back, prompting Smythe to use his ally Shocker to kidnap J. Jonah Jameson's son, John Jameson, as a means of trade. The process was supposed to go smoothly as Spider-Man would give Smythe the Promethium X for John Jameson. However, Smythe brought Shocker to the deal to fight Spider-Man, which resulted in Shocker almost dying since Spider-Man's body had been taken over by the symbiote, causing him to get stronger and a lot more ruthless in battle. Unfortunately for Kingpin, he could not sell the Promethium X as it had already turned into lead. He asked Smythe why he was unaware of the occurrence of such a thing, and Smythe responded by simply stating that he was never allowed to study it like he had intended to. Smythe upped his game by several notches when he created the Mega Slayer. It made its first appearance after Curt Connors brought the Tablet of Time, an ancient relic that could bring back the elderly's lost youth to his neogenic lab. The Mega Slayer burst into the lab and took away the tablet for Kingpin. The machine also proved to be way too strong for Spider-Man after Spider-Man intercepted it. Ultimately, Smythe was able to get away with the Tablet of Time. Back at the laboratory, Smythe studied the tablet and came to the conclusion that its energy was making it unstable. He believed destroying the tablet to be the best option, but Kingpin decided to get Curt Connors to the lab to get it working the right way. Meanwhile, Kingpin's wife was done and dusted with Kingpin being too absorbed in his life of crime. Smythe headed to Curt Connors' house to abduct him as the Mega Slayer. He was intercepted by Spider-Man. The resulting stress caused Connors to turn into the Lizard once again, causing Smythe to think that Connors was not present as he was unaware of the man being the Lizard. As a result, Smythe captured his wife Margaret. He also gave Spider-Man the ultimatum of handing over Curt Connors. Spider-Man met Smythe at the Empire State University rooftop but without Connors, as the latter had retreated to the sewers. Due to the absence of Connors, a furious Smythe almost killed Spider-Man with a Mega Slayer, but he stopped himself soon because he was summoned by Kingpin. Meanwhile, the crime lord Silvermane had abducted Kingpin's wife Vanessa and was using it to blackmail him into giving him the Tablet of Time. Smythe reached the exchange point in his Mega Slayer suit where Silvermane's henchman Tombstone was present. After exchanging the Tablet of Time for Vanessa, Smythe tried to get back the tablet as well. However, Tombstone disabled the Mega Slayer by shooting a rocket launcher at it. Ultimately, Smythe failed terribly and Tombstone left with both Vanessa and the tablet. Smythe once again tracked down the location of the tablet and sent the Mega Slayer to attack Silvermane. However, it was soon taken out by Tombstone again. In the third season of Spider-Man, the animated series, Kingpin almost got busted by the feds for illegally selling classified information. To avert the crisis and save his boss, Smythe shifted the blame towards Peter Parker by using Kingpin's son Richard Fisk to frame him. Overnight, Peter Parker became a criminal in the eyes of the law and the people, but Peter soon found Matt Murdock, aka the Daredevil, as his attorney. They located evidence in the form of a data disk and decided to get it as it could clear Peter's name. Together, Spider-Man and Daredevil retrieved the disk from Kingpin's lair. Their escape causes Kingpin great worries considering his reputation and life were in jeopardy. To take out some steam, he shifted the blame on Smythe, who had planned to frame Parker for the criminal activities. In his defense, he did not know that Parker was Spider-Man. Later, they managed to use Chameleon and abducted Parker and Mary Jane. However, Detective Terry Lee and Daredevil saved the duo. Ultimately, Smythe's failure put Kingpin against him, who then disposed of Smythe. Naturally, Smythe began to resent his now former boss, so he seeks out Spider-Man, offering the web-slinger incriminating evidence against Kingpin. However, he was soon caught by the crime lord and immobilized. Smythe went on to be reminded about his failures by Kingpin, about how the Spider Slayers failed, and how Smythe's plan caused Kingpin's henchmen to get arrested. As a result, Smythe was reprogrammed before he got to visit Spider-Man. During the visit with Spider-Man, the new Smythe attacked a potential ally and almost killed him. Kingpin's new right-hand man, Herbert Landor, tried to reprogram him, but the experiment did not yield the intended results as Smythe got reprogrammed as per his memories. While Harry Osborn and Mary Jane were getting engaged, Smythe reached Oscorp Towers to kidnap Norman Osborn, whom he partially blamed for his father's death. Chaos ensued, and ultimately Norman, Harry, and Mary Jane were kidnapped. Smythe was taken to the lab again while Norman was turned into an audience for the Kingpin. It was revealed that Spencer Smythe was still alive and was placed in cryogenic suspension. They were oblivious to Spider-Man spying on the conversation. However, Spider-Man was soon spotted and attacked using a freshly programmed Smythe. Once again, Spider-Man was almost killed, but he soon revealed the truth about Smythe's father being alive to Smythe, causing the latter to turn against Kingpin once again. Landon's programming then wore off and Smythe's own consciousness took over, prompting him to attack Kingpin. Ultimately, Smythe succeeded in rescuing his father and Spencer's suspension unit.
You designed them? Sure you did. And I'm Spider-Man.
Alistair Smythe in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Smythe appeared in 2014's The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but not as a villain to Spider-Man. His role retained its antagonistic elements from the cartoon counterpart, as Smythe was directly or indirectly the reason why Electro was born. Max Dillon, or Electro, played by Jamie Foxx, was an electrical engineer who worked at Oscorp. He had been shunned his entire life and treated as a disposable man, even though he was the one who was responsible for designing New York's power grid at Oscorp. Meanwhile, Alistair Smythe, played by BJ Novak, worked at Oscorp as well. On the day Dillon was saved by Spider-Man for the first time, he went on to be greeted rudely by Smythe. The latter undermined Dillon even though he had borrowed, or rather stolen, Dillon's design for Oscorp's power grid. After being saved and acknowledged by Spider-Man, Dillon was having a better day, but the incident with Smythe took his mindset back to square one. The next day happened to be Dillon's birthday. Smythe was aware of it, but he forced him to stay back at the office to fix a broken power surge. While leaving, Smythe also wished him a happy birthday, but only sarcastically. The accident later caused Dillon to turn into Electro, and Smythe's constant misbehavior towards him became one of the triggers that made Dillon lose it after Spider-Man took some time to remember his name during their second meeting. And that was all for Smythe in the movie. However, it was a setup for the future where the character would appear in a more prominent role with his Spider Slayers. However, the franchise did not have a Spider-Man movie following the second installment. Alistair Smythe's comic origins. Smythe is not as important in the comics as he is in the animated series. He has not been in the comics for a long time. He did have some similarities with his cartoon counterpart, but certain differences distinguished the two clearly. Smythe was crippled after fighting Spider-Man instead of getting crippled from the laboratory accident. He later joined Kingpin, but this time, he was not made to encase his body in the exoskeleton of the Spider Slayer. In fact, this Smythe willingly became the body for the Spider Slayer as he desperately wanted to kill Spider-Man. He also left Kingpin's side after the two disagreed on how they should deal with Spider-Man. In many ways, Smythe from the comics was a lot more self-driven than the Smythe in the animated series. His story began with the antiques of his father, Spencer Smythe, who made his debut in the 25th issue of the Amazing Spider-Man comics. He knew J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily Bugle hated the web slinger and as such sought out his funding for his Spider Slayer project. After the machines failed to fulfill their objective of capturing Spider-Man, J. Jonah Jameson cut off all funding. As a result, Spencer grew an obsession towards killing both Spider-Man and J. Jonah for personal reasons, which caused him to become a criminal for acquiring the necessary funding. Due to the radioactive materials in his robot, Spencer Smythe died of radiation poisoning. While on the verge of death, he chained Spider-Man and Jameson to a time bomb. So when he died, he believed he had fulfilled his mission. However, that was simply not true since Spider-Man had managed to defuse the bomb on time. Spencer's son, Alistair, went on to inherit his father's affinity for robotics and hatred for the superhero and the journalist. He soon began to design newer, better, and deadlier Spider Slayer robots. Combined with his tactical brilliance and the robots hunting Spider-Man in packs, Alistair proved to be a much more formidable opponent for Spider-Man than his father. These robots were arachnid in design, and some of them made their cartoon counterparts look like toys. The one design that bore the best testament to this was the Ultimate Spider Slayer. Previously, Alistair had only created drone-style robots, but the Ultimate Spider Slayer encased Smythe in a biological exoskeleton that gave him abilities that were similar to those of a metahuman. He gained access to super strength, speed, durability, and the likes. He also had web shooters that could outdo Spider-Man and sharp claws. Even though he had created it after being defeated by Spider-Man time and again, even the Ultimate Spider Slayer fell short of the friendly neighborhood superhero's abilities. In the 654th issue of the 2011 Amazing Spider-Man comics, Smythe pulled off a major feat when he took the life of J. Jonah Jameson's wife, Marla Jameson. The incident managed to do a psychological number on Spider-Man and even set up Smythe for execution. However, when he tried to free himself by summoning his Spider Slayers, Otto Octavius countered the technology and killed Smythe.
Smythe? Is that you? It's Smythe, all right, but what has he done to himself?
What makes Alistair Smythe so dangerous? Even though Smythe's story began with him as a crippled man, his true powers lay not in his physical prowess, but in his creative and technological abilities. He was a genius intelligence and a terrific electrical engineer. When Smythe got affiliated with Kingpin, he was given a hover chair that came with mechanical claws. As the Spider Slayer, his hover chair went on to have fire missiles, which were given to him by Herbert Landor. When he became encased in the exoskeleton of the Spider Slayer, he experienced super strength. It also gave him enhanced speed, reflexes, and agility. Other attributes he had were wall crawling, durability, and fancy equipment such as claws, blades, and laser guns.
You won't get away this time.
Alistair Smythe as the primary antagonist in the 2012 Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game. Alistair Smythe appears as the primary villain of the 2012 video game known as The Amazing Spider-Man 2, voiced by Nolan North. Smythe here was probably the original creator of the Spider Slayers, unlike the other adaptations, where he inherited and worked upon his father's creations. Smythe's job was to dispose of the remains of Kurt Connors' research. However, he did not start off as a disabled man. In fact, he became paralyzed later. He came into contact with Spider-Man for the first time after he caught Peter and Gwen Stacy while they were breaking into the Oscorp Tower. He went on to reveal how they were using Connors' research to fuse human DNA with animal DNA, which Connors was working on to grow back his amputated arm, which eventually turned him into the Lizard. Soon, the cross-species Scorpion broke free from its tube, prompting the others to break free as well. While Scorpion infected Smythe and the other scientists, Gwen Stacy was infected by cross-species vermin. The others rampaged Oscorp Tower and escaped. Spider-Man put every infected person in quarantine and tried to exterminate the cross-species with a robot. He destroys the creatures except Vermin, who had retreated to the sewers. However, in the sewers, his battle was intercepted by Smythe's hunters, Seekers, and Sentries. Ultimately, they lost Vermin's DNA, and Smythe went on to test Spider-Man and Connors' antidote to fight his infection. But the test turned out to be unsuccessful as it paralyzed Smythe's legs, prompting him to go crazy. However, it did slow down his infection. Smythe soon unleashed his combat sentries, but such acts resulted in him getting fired from Oscorp's board of directors. Smythe went rogue and used nanobots to cure the others of their infections. It turned out to be a success, and Smythe continued to produce his sentries. Smythe tried to kill Spider-Man again and used his SO3 robot to do so. He also enjoyed a position of power in this play because he had taken away Spider-Man's powers using his sentries. Ultimately, Spider-Man got help from Lizard and Whitney Chang. Together, they defeated Smythe, prompting the latter to regain his sanity while being arrested. In the post-credits of the game, it was revealed that Smythe had regained his legs and escaped his arrest. It then went to an unknown laboratory, however he was still infected. But he had activated a hunter which recognized that he was infected. As a result, Smythe was shot by the hunter. Unlike many other villains, Smythe is not exactly a bad person. In fact, the trend of projecting villains as bad people died down a long time ago, giving us a variety of villains who instill mixed feelings in us. Smythe is one of them. He only wants to slay Spider-Man because he thinks Spider-Man caused his father to die. When he realizes that Kingpin is keeping Spencer Smythe in suspended animation, he goes after Kingpin. Such character traits add more layers to a character, helping the audience occasionally understand where they are coming from. But ultimately, it is not the sob story, but how you deal with it that determines whether you are a villain or just antagonistic. In the case of Smythe, he is the latter. If you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks to everyone